Hello, Clayton Bailey here, Green Scene Home Inspections. I'm going to be talking about just some basic things for real estate agents. You might pick up some gold nuggets that even if you've been in the business a very long time, you might learn a thing or two that's in here. So Home Inspections 101, this is a short version of a very long presentation I can do, an hour-long presentation I can do at the office. So if you would like to have us out for your office, or you feel like maybe your fellow agents need to know some of this information as well, we can do a more extended version at your office. So without further ado, first, who are we? Green Scene Home Inspections. We are a 7-man inspection shop. We've got we've done over 6,000 houses throughout the Metroplex. We are the highest rated reviewed home inspection company that's out there, and I am a 3rd-generation inspector that is narrating your video here, Clayton Bailey. Why are we here? The home inspection basics. What is my role as a realtor? How to prepare buyers and sellers, and then etiquette. How to save time, money, and stress. I should have put stress on there because that's the main thing. We want to keep our emotional capital and keep everybody calm and relaxed. So I won't go read through all of this, but it's just the boring part, the definition of a home inspection. And then you have the TREC standards of practice through those sections, and you can go on the TREC website to see those are the minimum standards for inspectors that are put forth by the Texas Real Estate Commission. There are 3 levels of home inspectors. You have the apprentice inspector, a real estate inspector, and the professional inspector. An apprentice inspector can follow a professional inspector for a certain period of time, and they still have to take a certain number of hours, but it kind of shortens the number of hours that they have to take, and then they can take their test and become a real estate inspector. After that, the next graduation is the professional inspector, and they have to have at least, there's a little over 1,300 hours of education total, and then you have to do 32 hours of continuing education every 2 years. The professional inspector can also do commercial inspections. All of our home inspectors are licensed professional inspectors, so we can do residential and commercial. Let's talk about interpreting the inspector license number. So when you see inspector license number, it should be in all marketing, advertising, as well as the report. So the lower the number, the longer that person's been an inspector. So if you're a 4-digit inspector, you've been in the business almost 20 years. I'm 10,417, so 10,417 is where I'm at, and I got my license in 2009. If you're getting a license today, you're going to be in the 23,000. If you got a license a few years ago, you were in the 22,000. So that's the way that license numbers work. Again, we are governed by the Texas Real Estate Commission, and we have to use the TREC Report Form 7-5. So if you have an old school inspector that doesn't keep up with the times, and he may be writing in a really old form that's no longer valid. So if it did go to court or litigation, it would be thrown out. We inspect by today's current building standards. So the code changes every 3 years. I had to learn the 2006, and then the 2009, and then the 2012, and then the 2015 code. So every 3 years it changes. We are in the 2018 changeover right now, so it is 2018, but we will be changing over to that code next year. Standards of practice versus the 2015 code. So standards of practice is the minimum standards set forth by the Texas Real Estate Commission, and we as inspectors are looking at today's current 2015 code on all properties. So even if it's a 1940s, 50s, 60s house, we're talking about today's building code. So it's not that we're going to do anything about it, but we have to tell the client about it. What are we looking for? Things that are broken, things that are unsafe, or causing damage to the property. Otherwise, they are as-built conditions. So the old house is built that way. You're not going to go to a seller and say, I want you to bring everything up to code. Well, you can't unless it's broken, unless it's not safe, or if it's causing damage to the property. There's some fun videos in here. I'm going to skip over real fast. If you go to watch this video from the website, you could be able to click on these and watch them. So when we are looking at old houses versus newer houses, one of the first things that we do when we sit down with the client at the end is we ask them, what's your experience with home ownership? And if they're looking at an old house from the 30s or 40s, because that seems to be kind of the trendy thing that younger kids want to see the older houses, we want to just let them know that all houses on that block are going to have very similar issues and that there's going to be a little bit more maintenance required on those older houses. On newer houses, there are fewer things wrong. However, there are more product recalls in today's newer construction than there was way back in the day. So a lot of recalled items and defects that we look for. Generally with new construction and the expansive growth that we're having now, what we're seeing is the foundation guy did a good job, the electrician did a good job, the painter, the cabinet floor guy did a good job, but the plumber didn't. They were using their C team versus their A team, and so there's a lot of plumbing mistakes. So usually it's one category where we see several errors. So if you've seen my presentation, and that's why you're here right now, you've heard me talk about CSST, corrugated stainless steel tubing. NBC did a story about it, lightning striking a house, and it burns a little hole there in the gas line, and then it stays in the wall or in the attic. Nobody knows about it, and it catches the house on fire. It has to be grounded or bonded. So if it's bonded or grounded to this manifold, which is up in the attic, that is how you overcome that, with a number 8 copper wire back to the gas manifold, or back to the gas meter, or the main ground in the panel box. You've heard me talk about panel boxes before. If you've heard me in a presentation, there are several out there that have a bad name that we as inspectors have to defer to the electrician to reevaluate. Notice I said divert to the electrician to reevaluate, not replace. An inspector should never say replace that panel box. We are not licensed electricians and do not have the power to say that. However, I want you to know what the bad ones are. So we have the Federal Pacific Stab Lock, you have the Sylvania, and you have the Zinsco. The other one that's out there is the Challenger panel box from the 80s. So just know that those panel boxes have been known to have issues over time where things go wrong. So we have to defer it to the electrician. Some more little fun videos that you can check out. Now the important stuff, helping our clients through the inspection process as the buyer's agent and as the seller's agent. So as a buyer's agent, before the inspection. So one of the little funny things we have over here, buyers think hiring a good home inspector is expensive. You should try hiring a bad one. The most expensive thing that you could ever do is hire a cheap home inspector, because they're going to miss a bunch of stuff and your buyers are going to be left holding the bill. So choose the right home inspection company. And here's some of the pros and the cons. So a new home inspector that's newly licensed is going to go out there and he's going to be Cheap Charlie. He's going to be the less expensive guy, but he also has the least amount of experience, and he may not know about some of these things that are going on, because he hasn't experienced the downfalls of that before. So it's not till you get 2 or 3 years experience under you, where you probably made a few mistakes and you learn from your mistakes, that you know. And so beware of Cheap Charlie. The single man shop, that's where I came from. There's a lot of companies out there that just want to be a single man shop and nothing more. And that's okay. You get some really good inspectors out there that are single man shops. They're very good. The kind of downfall or downside is that they're booked out. It's hard to get them on the phone if you have a problem or you have an issue. But otherwise, single man shops are kind of the bread and butter of the industry. If you get with some of the big national chains, and you kind of know what I'm talking about when you see some of those national chains. So a lot of inspectors get their home inspector license and then go sign up for one of these national companies. We've hired multiple inspectors away from these national companies, and we're amazed to see what they don't do, because it's part of their national rules that we don't check shower pans, or we don't check this, because it's their rule as a company that they don't do those things. And as long as they're adhering to the local standards of practice, they're okay with that. But you would be amazed at how much the national guy doesn't check for, because his company will not allow him to check for those things. And then you get into your multi-inspector firms. So multi-inspector firms, you've got inspectors spread throughout the Metroplex. Generally, they're going to be geographically placed. So if you've got somebody that's out in more of a rural area, they're going to be more used to septic systems and older style stuff, where if you have the inspector that's in downtown, they're used to condos and that kind of thing, or high rises. versus the inspectors that's out in the suburb. They're going to know that area very well. So you have a better benefit of picking the multi-inspector firm if you have a client, because you can kind of gauge who you want that client to deal with. The other benefit about the multi-inspector firm is that we always have a front office staff that can answer your phone calls all the time. So when you're having a problem 24/7, 365, we're going to be there to answer the phone to help your clients through that problem. As a buyer's agent, reduce the liability by providing 3 names of inspection companies. Schedule your inspection during the first couple of days at the beginning of the option period. No house is perfect. Neighborhood expectations, we talked about that. Go over cost expectations. Stop telling clients that a home inspection should cost between $250 and $300 or less than that, because it's just that you're pushing your buyer into a less expensive or a cheap home inspection, and then it's gonna come back to bite them. Go over buyer property concerns. So before you even have the inspection and you're walking the house with the client, talk about what are you concerned about, and they're probably going to tell you a story on what happened to their previous place, and so now their alarm's up in that spot. But it's good to talk about that stuff so you can go ahead and cut it off at the pass. Make sure agreements are signed and paid. So a lot of agents are waiting for their home inspection report, and their client hasn't signed the agreement or paid for it, and so it's not released yet. So make sure that's done. During the inspection, encourage buyers to come for the wrap-up. If they're there the whole time, their anxiety level tends to go up for every picture that we snap, so it makes them a whole lot more nervous. Should you attend as a real estate agent? You know, I leave that up to your brokerage. All brokerages are different. Some brokerages want somebody represented in that house the whole time that you're there as the inspector. Others, they don't care. So just check with your broker on what your rules and policies are. Offer to show disclosed paperwork to the inspector. I and the rest of my inspectors, we don't like to look at any disclosed paperwork until after we've seen it with our own eyes, so that we're not making any skewed judgments based upon somebody else's conclusions. Encourage buyers to take notes during the presentation. So we have a little notepad that has foundation, roof, plumbing, electrical, HVAC laid out, so they can take notes easily in that, and they can be reviewed. After the inspection, review those buyer notes. Focus on the top 5 categories, which we just talked about. Call appropriate specialists for cost estimates during the option period. The home inspector cannot give you cost estimates. It goes against the policy of being a third-party unbiased opinion if we're giving you cost estimates, because we may not know what the cost is of something in that particular area at that time, and so you got to go with the electrician or the plumber or the roofer to tell you how much something is. Put together the repair amendment list or money off price. That's something that you have to discuss with your buyers. So what things are you going to ask for? Don't just hand the whole home inspection report back to the seller and say fix everything. You need to have a good logical conversation with your client to say, we're going to put together a repair amendment that's got 15 items on it, 20 items on it, whatever. And then we're just going to ask off money in lieu of repairs for the price. So we don't want to step on your toes. That's your job as an agent to negotiate that stuff out, but we want to help you through that and streamline it. Some common recommendations that we get from home inspectors is to have the electrical looked at. A lot of times electricians, they're so busy that they just want you to send them the report or the pages that are pertinent to the report so they can give you cost estimates. We're always going to recommend HVAC servicing if we think that the unit has been neglected or the filters haven't been changed properly, because every spring and every summer we should be doing that anyway. A structural engineer versus a foundation company. Inspectors should always recommend a structural engineer, not a foundation company, because they are licensed by the state of Texas. A hydrostatic test versus a camera. A hydrostatic test is going to tell you if it is holding water or not. A camera is going to go in there, and it may be only a 50-foot camera, but you got a big crack or a tree root that's 60 feet back, so it's not going to be conclusive, where that hydrostatic test is filling up the whole system to see if it holds water, and if it doesn't, you got to move on to the isolation test. Having the roof further evaluated. We do have licensed drone operators, so if there's some of those roofs that we can't get to, we can fly our drone up there to check it out. Beware that, make sure if you're using an inspector that is going to use a drone that they are licensed, because that can come back on you as well. A seller's agent before the inspection, the benefits of a pre-listing inspection. So there's two schools of thought to that. If you've got a super clean house, some people just want to go ahead and do that pre-listing inspection to make sure they're just cutting off any negotiation before it happens. If you've got an older house, you know it's kind of a mess, you might not want to do an inspection because you have to disclose that inspection to the next person, right? Have a serious conversation with your seller about disclosure accuracy. This is the most common thing that ends up going to court. Tell your sellers to fill out the disclosure accurately. If something happened to the roof, if there was a flood, if there was termites, if there was something, write it in there. Because if we find in there, or the buyers move in 2 years later, open up some walls and discover that some stuff was time dated under their thing, now you're going to court. So just make sure everything is honest and forthcoming. Have all work done by licensed professionals. Have repair receipts available upon request. As a seller's agent, set up for success. Have the attic and crawl space hatches available. Make sure your side gates around the yard are unlocked and open. Remote keys for gates are available. Where's the super box? If you're going to put your super box on a tree next to the neighbor's yard because your client doesn't want it on their door, that's fine, but tell us where you're putting it so we're not hunting around the whole property trying to find the super box. If they have an alarm code, go ahead and write it on a little key or inside the super box that's attached to the key, so that way we can easily access that alarm code. Remove pets and waste from the yard. It's no fun when you have the dog that's in the crate that's barking the whole time. It breaks my heart. It's no fun stepping in dog waste when you're in the outside, because we're looking up at the roof, not necessarily down at the ground. But we do wear shoe covers to overcome that. Utilities on. So in your sales contract, paragraph 7, it says the seller agrees to have all utilities on during the inspection process, in the option period. So if we get there and there's one of the utilities that are off, whether it be gas, water, electric, whatever, we're still going to do the inspection, but we have to charge $145 to come back and inspect that gas supply system, which could be a number of things, getting back up into the house or whatever it was. So just to make things easy, when you go active, make sure that all utilities are on, and then somebody's on top of making sure that's happening. Remove all personal property in front of panel boxes, crawl spaces, etc. So if there's a boat in the garage in front of the panel box and we can't get to the panel box, well, we got to come back and check that panel box out. Now the seller's having to pay a re-inspection fee because everything has to be open and available. Same thing with the crawl space. So we're not going to move a whole bunch of storage in a closet. We have before, we will, but we have to call and ask your permission to do that. And we generally don't like to disturb the seller's belongings. So this house was not set up for success. You can see that in the shower can't be ran, the bathtub can't be ran, and you can't get to that bedroom to check outlets or doors or windows or nothing. So set your house up for success so that we don't have to come back out and have just a whole nother moment again. As a seller's agent during the inspection, seller etiquette to minimize the seller anxiety. Should you be present? Again, check with your broker to check on that. Should your seller be present? We're going to say no, because their anxiety level is going to go up. That's what we talked about in that first line up there. Some other examples, though, are if you have kids that are under the age of 18, my inspectors are instructed to not enter the house, period. If there is an underage kid alone in the house, we will not go into that house. The kid needs to go somewhere, or an adult needs to come home with the kid. If you have somebody that is unstable, or grandma has dementia or Alzheimer's, we've had it happen before where somebody that has some mental, there's a strange person in their house and they met you, and then 5 minutes later they forgot they met you, and now you're in their house and now they're coming after you with things. So that's not fun. Don't put us in that situation. Keep your phone handy for 911s. If anything happens, God forbid, something wrong happens in the house and the inspector puts his foot through the ceiling or floods something, or alarm's going off and we don't have an alarm code, we're going to call you first. So make your phone available. Leave your business card or contact on site so that we know who to call when that's happening. After the inspection, Negotiate broken, unsafe. Old does not count. Remind sellers the purpose of the home inspection is to inspect today's building code. Remind seller about option period for estimates, and you must make the home available not just for the home inspection, but as well as the roofer, foundation guy, or what have you. And that is it. I hope you learned a thing or two. Thank you very much from Green Scene Home Inspections. We'd love to have you as part of our fan club. Check us out on Facebook, and we will see you at a house in the near future.